wrong for Fay Ray and King Kong. They got caught in a celluloid jam. Then had a deadly pace. It came from outer space.
A celluloid jam? That's what we call King Kong, apparently. But I guess now I can go back and watch Rocky Horror, an actual good movie.
I was so confused. Like, you're throwing curveballs in the opening audio, and I remember like, wait, what is this? I'm supposed to know what this is. I was like, did I watch the same movie as you?
Science fiction double feature from Rocky Horror Picture Show, which we just saw for the first time and covered for our Camp Cinema Classics.
Yeah, back like a couple seasons ago. That was a good episode. Hey folks, welcome to Film Trace. This is a podcast where we trace the life of a film from conception to production all the way to release and reception. It is season 15. We're doing Visionary Remakes. It is the 1970s that we're looking at. We're looking at King Kong 1976 and King Kong 1933, the original. And me being an idiot focused on King Kong 2005. So we'll have that as an added plus to this episode. I guess it makes sense. They're all, it's all part of remakes.
Yeah. We talked about the Herzog Nosferatu in the opener.
Yeah,
so
it's all going to work out fine. Special friend and guest Riley, you were on before for a couple episodes, right? At least one.
Yeah, I think maybe 2 times before.
You did? Did you do 20 Days Later with us?
28 Days Later. I remember that one.
I think Scream 2 was the other one.
Oh yeah,
yeah, classic. How's it going, man? How's life?
Pretty good, I guess. How about you?
The same. We're all trying to getting along with the pure chaos of reality.
The default answer for now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What's the latest pickup in the collection of either Laserdiscs or Criterion?
Oh,
what have we got recently?
That's a great question. I got one recently, a Laserdisc called Twilight of the Cockroaches. Do you know this film?
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, it's a Japanese anime. Well, it's a blend of like anime and live action, actually, from the late 1980s. And apparently it's really hard to find. Like, it's out of print even as a DVD, and it was never a Blu-ray. So I scored a copy for like $12 of the Laserdisc.
Nice. Oh, this looks cool.
Yeah.
How big is your Laserdisc collection?
I don't want to talk about that. I don't think.
It's been decades long.
More than 10. Less than 700.
That's a good.
$6.99.
All right, let's talk about King Kong. Maybe we should talk about baggage first.
Yeah, we gotta get the baggage out of the way, man.
I don't know, Chris. You go for it. What do you think? What's your baggage of the original?
This is
the 1976 version.
The toughest episode for me in a good while. I gotta be straight up. I've never liked King Kong as a story in any of its iterations. I just think it's something that should stay in the past, and I had to learn about it, in film classes. The effects are probably still the only interesting thing about it, and I know it's kind of seminal in the advancements of cinema, especially the original 1933 version. But when I saw it in college for the first time, all the way through, we grew up with King Kong in the pop culture ether, right? But never sat through a whole King Kong movie until my first film class, I think it was, in college. And I was bored. I remember being so bored and wondering when the heck they were going to get back to New York City. For some reason, I remember distinctly being like, are we really going to just be on this island for the majority of the movie? It was so discomforting because obviously one of the main things our professor talked about was how you can't not talk about it is so baked into the racism of America.
Of course, yeah.
And so it was just and purposefully so. The professor did a good job leading us through it, but it was just I just felt gross after watching it, after talking about it, after reading about it, and so I never saw the 76 version. But then, of course, here comes Peter Jackson in '05, and it feels just like a obligatory, why is he doing this? Let's go find out. Is he off his rocker because he's, drunk with power, like the original filmmaker at the center of the 33 version? I barely remember it. I slept through a lot of it. I have not revisited it. I wanted to for this episode, but I just ran
I
out
can
of
tell
runway.
you all about it.
Oh my
I can
God.
tell you all about it. And you've never seen the 76 version before. I hadn't either at all.
Yeah.
Which is really fascinating. Riley, what about you? The original 76, 2005. What's sort of your history with them? Have you seen them before?
Yeah, I don't remember the first time I saw the 33. I was certainly young. I mean, I was a child, and so I kind of grew up with it. The 76, actually, I saw as a kid many times, too. I remember it, I can picture it in my dad's handwriting. We had this large collection of VHS, home recorded videos of movies off of TV or whatever. And I could picture the King Kong writing in my dad's handwriting because I grew up in a small town, didn't have a Blockbuster. We had the grocery store to rent videos, or we had the library. So we had our own private collection, I guess, of TV movies. But I grew up watching that one. I didn't think a lot of it. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. And then didn't watch it for probably 30 some years. So this was a revisit for sure, but after a very long gap for the 76.
Yeah, definitely. The incredible amount of just frustrating boredom, like I mentioned, it just came rushing back, and like you said, right, it was just a long stretch of time in between. I'm just like, why am I so bored again? I fell asleep during the 76 version, not the 33 version this time. But how about you, Dan? When did you originally see the? I know you didn't rewatch for the episode. It's shame on you. But
I know.
When had you originally seen the 33 version?
When I was a kid. I've seen it probably 3 or 4 times.
Okay.
It's weird. King Kong, obviously falls within the sort of big monster movie genre. Basically, I guess started it, right? I've never, despite the fact that I love disaster movies and I love sci-fi, I love adventure movies for the most part, I've never took to the King Kong series, any of them really. And I kind of remember myself in 2005 when the Peter Jackson version came out, and I was like, why? What are we doing? I was so completely uninterested because the original is the original. It's important for a lot of different reasons, but in terms of my personal interest, not very high. And I also never was into Godzilla movies or anything like that. So it just has never been a genre that I really enjoyed all that much. And the 76 version I'd never seen before. And I was actually, I don't know if pleasantly surprised is the right word to use for the 76 version, but I was very intrigued by it. It, in the same way that the original I found to be quite kind of tedious and boring, and like you, Chris, and the 2005 version might be even worse. The 76 version is a weird movie. It's weird. It's campy. It's bizarre. The choices are just very, very of the 70s of that time. And so for me watching it now, it feels like a time capsule curiosity. So for me, there's just, I don't know, there's so much more meat on the bones in the 76 version than these other versions. So it's sort of like, I don't know, I'm attracted to that one a little bit more. I could never argue that it's a good movie per se. But the problems of it are a little bit more fascinating, I think, than the problems of, say, the 2005 version, which is a direct copy for the most part of the 1933 version. I mean, he plays it very close to the original. But I think like you, Chris, there's never been a huge draw for me to the King Kong movies in general. And so this is also a tough episode for me to sort of sit back and go like, diving through all this stuff. Like you bring up obviously the race stuff. Like there's so many stories around the original, and then the 76 version where they asked African American people to come in and act like apes during the casting process. I'm like, I know, whatever. It's just, I don't know. There's so much baggage with these movies, and it's really bizarre to watch the 2005 version and not feel that baggage. But how do you want to dive into this? You want to talk about the 33 version, kind of where it came from, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, my central question about the 33 version, and I'm curious because Riley, you are really like devout when it comes to like digging into cinema's past. Like you'll do full on watches of like you're in the middle of a Robert Wise watch, right? And so I'm sure you're seeing that with his movies, especially because he's an even more eclectic filmmaker, arguably, than Cooper was. Marion C. Cooper for King Kong. What value do you see in it? Is there something more there than the effects?
Than the effects? Oh, that's,
or is the effects enough?
I think that's unfair to remove the effects from the equation. I'm because I'm going to be the only. I'm not going to be a defender, but I like 33 Kong. I don't like 76 Kong. I could take or leave 2005 Kong. I still like 33 Kong, and I see the problems inherent, both in the racism and sexism bordering on misogyny, or maybe even cross it a little bit. But I think I'm not going to give it a pass, but I think that its problems are, I mean, the movie's almost 100 years old, right? And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be judged from, doing something wrong just because it was 100 years ago. But I think that it's hard to look at things with our eyes and our understanding from something and judge it by our modern standards. Now that said, I think it's more naive than it is malicious.
Sure.
Is my take, but take or leave that, I guess.
No, I think that's totally fair, and I think it's one of those things where, I'm sure there's tons of older films that, for whatever reason, nostalgia included, if you grow up with it, or if you do or find the ability to remove your own modern sensibilities from it to appreciate what it does, what it did, then it can still be enjoyable. I don't know, Dan, do you, like, you also you say you grew up with the 33 version. I think I'm the only one here that didn't. Is there something there that, like, I guess I'm just also still wondering, like, what made the story permeate American culture so much that, like, kids growing up in the 80s and 90s, and like I didn't even have any knowledge that a Jeff Bridges version existed. It was always, that stop motion imagery that was just iconic growing up, even though I didn't see it till much later in my life. Why is this story so everywhere?
I was going to ask you the same question. No, that's the one thing that has stood out to me in thinking about this and watching these movies, is that the original King Kong does have this exalted status. I mean, if you go into a film history class, of course, there's going to be the bullet points about the special effects and sort of the blending of genres and the spectacle of it, and it's the success of it. But I think the bigger question to me is that, like, why, as a child in the 1980s and 1990s, I guess, to some degree, was this just still such in the zeitgeist? And why was there a massive fight to remake this movie in 76? And we'll talk about that a little bit later. The multiple lawsuits going back and forth to get this movie made, and then doing it again, 25, 30 years later, going through this entire process to get it back on the screen. There's something here with this story. And I think that, if you look at the core story of what's happening here, it's a classic damsel in distress. You have this big, scary other that's trying to take her, and you have these white men that are trying to protect her. I mean, I don't think we have to dig that far into American culture to sort of understand the potentially unfortunate appeal of said plotline. There's something here that is, I think it's also like this visceral sort of reaction to this massive potential danger in life, right? That's what Kong represents. He's this uncontrollable menace. And I don't know, there's something to that basic plot line that like of there being this danger in society. We have to protect the vulnerable women. And I don't know, I think there's unfortunately a very, very conservative through line on this plot line and story that exists in all the versions of it, that doesn't represent the United States all that well. I don't know if you guys think that's agree with that or no.
I totally agree with that. However, I think there's another read too, and whether or not it's the intention, I don't know. I mean, it's everything what you said and all the problems inherent in that. But I don't think that Denham is a hero in this. Not only do I not think that from my perspective, I don't think he's presented as a hero in this. Sure. And I think that there's a read where, it's almost like a fable of hubris, there's this conquering colonialism exploitation aspect going on, obviously. And look what happens when they bring him back to New York. It's not heroic for Kong either. Like it's a tragedy. The whole thing is a tragedy.
Sure.
And I guess that's my read on it more than, I think it has all those things. Like it's this adventure story. It's the exoticism, which is problematic, and all of that. It's all of those things. And that's what it was in that time. But I think there's something else going on, whether it's intentional or not. I think it comes through that they made a mistake out of their, for lack of a better word, I said already, but hubris, and this is what happens. And that's why the 33 works for me more than the 76, because the reason for we'll get to it later, but the reason for bringing him back in the 76 is very dubious. Whereas you can understand why Denham is seeking, he's seeking fame and fortune and he wants to make this big movie. He's just a kind of a charlatan, and he's presented that way in the first frames of the film. Like nobody wants to give him a girl, quote unquote, to go on his boat because nobody trusts his intentions really.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. No, I think that's totally fair. It reminds me of, I'm in my English class, I'm teaching Othello, and that's kind of the crux of the final discussion when we read that play is, for all of its problematic nature, there is still some insight into like, if it's the rise and fall of hubris in King Kong, it's the, rise and fall of attempting to not place a horrible amount of pressure and judgment on someone of color, even when they're, given lauded status in a Western world. And so I think that does ring true somewhat. The thing that one of the rare moments that I appreciated rewatching was Fay Wray as the starlet, seeing how there is this kind of tenuous relationship both between her and Denham, as well as with the he's so forgettable, the younger male lead, Jeff Bridges stand-in. I know Jeff Bridges is that guy stand-in, but whatever. She has this kind of quality to her, not unlike some of the other early ingenue film stars like Claudette Colbert, where you have this like, you almost like have this trust in them to know that like they're basically just like doing self-preservation, even though it's also very much presented as like through that male gaze lens. So just like the racism could be seen both ways, I think, there's an argument to be made that the sexism could be seen both ways too. So I appreciate that sentiment, even if I struggled to see it.
What do you mean? Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Well, I don't know. Is there anything else to talk about without getting into what went wrong in 76?
I mean, I was going to sort of think about, like, and maybe this is a segue we could do into 76. It's sort of the relationship between the female lead and Kong, and how it changes in each version. And I think, you know, that's the one thing in the 76 version where I was just sort of like, wow, this is the original. Obviously, there is I wouldn't call it overt sexuality. It's definitely there.
Suggestion,
yeah, suggested. I mean, this is pre-code, right?
It is pre-code, right?
So the 76 version, there's a couple of scenes where I was like, this is very sexual. And I think that, like, I don't know, did you guys feel in the 2005 one, oh my god, like unsexualized? I mean, completely no sexual tension at all between Kong and what's her name, Naomi Watts.
I don't know if there's much evidence on screen. We touched on this briefly with Heavenly Creatures, also Peter Jackson, where it's like, that was like him coming out of the gate, you know, from horror to something a little more mainstream, and it's just like, I don't know, like stopped being a sexual being and was only interested in spectacle. But I also know that there's at least one Lord of the Rings fan in this this room right now, so I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I could go on about that for a long time. But I mean, yeah, the 76 version, I think,
so horny.
It's very, and it's the thing that stood out to me the most. I was like, this is, wow, I'm like sweating a little bit. Like, this is nuts. But I think it plays into like the 76 style of that film and how it's so different. It's just so, I felt very loose to me. It felt very, the script, obviously the massive difference between all these versions is, you know, 2 take place in 1933 during the Great Depression, and the 76 version is contemporary, takes place in the 70s. So obviously there's going to be differences, but it just felt there was more comedy, there was more levity, and it felt kind of breezy in some instances. And I don't know, it sounds like with you guys, you didn't feel like that played all that well. I don't know, what's your opinion on that? Did you feel like the tone, what is the tone of the 76 version to y'all?
Go ahead, Riley. You're the guest.
So I thought the first half, to be honest, was pretty, if not great, very good. Yeah. Like, I liked the setup a lot. The production values were great. I liked the cast. I mean, you can't really go wrong with Gordon. What's his name? Yeah, Grodin. I was going to say Gordon. Grodin and Jeff Bridges. But then it's like 6 different people directed the second half of the film. It's all over the place. Like, if it would have just leaned and if it would have picked a lane and stayed in it, like, is it a disaster movie? Is it a monster movie? Is it a comedy adventure? Like, I have no idea. Like, everything before Kong is fine. And then once we get to the island and get to Kong, especially, it's just, I don't know, it's just a mess. I couldn't grab on anything. I will say I was never bored, but that's because I couldn't get a hold of anything. I was working so hard to grab onto something and stick with it. It was just a mess for me.
Yeah, it in no uncertain terms. Like, one of the things that I noticed doing the research is that there's a concerning amount of reappraisal of this movie that's gone on over the past 15 years or so.
What is that all about?
I wish I could understand. The only thing that kind of rings true, and this is also kind of paradoxical, like we didn't talk about how the 30s version also has like one solid giant gorilla foot in camp, right? There's this very strong connection to the idea of over the top, of just completely theatrical. The score is so insane. But the 76 version is like this weird, like you said, Riley, it's super muddled mixture of like you keep thinking it's gonna be campy. Like there's these little elements of it, like the fact that Jessica Lange's character's name
Dwan.
is Dwan.
Yeah, Dwan.
Dwan, yeah.
It's like Dawn, but you switch the A and the W.
That threw me for a loop. And there's like a reference to Deep Throat, the porn film, not the
Right. There's lots of little
thing.
jokes like that early on, especially, and even jokes like relating to the 33, like self-referentially too. I can't think of an example, but
Dwan says that she got sick going to the top of the Empire State Building.
Oh, right, exactly.
Yeah. But you're super right on. Like the last half, it's just like I agree. Well, I was super excited when Charles Grodin showed up because that was a surprise for me, and I was like, "This is like perfect casting." I kind of wished that the first reveal of King Kong was actually a giant version of Martin Short's Clifford, but that was like that was entertaining, kind of seeing him grapple with the high seas and be like play into this megalomaniacal oil man archetype, but then it doesn't know what it wants to be after once you get to Kong, and combine that with, I don't know about the effect. Like there's also a lot of stuff about the effects of this film.
They're bad. I think,
but they're just straight
bad. I don't know why people. I was reading some of your notes, and I was like, I don't know why people thought that these were good effects. I mean, maybe in '76, but Jaws is what, the year before,
I think,
and I know that shark but it's used so well, and none of this was used well. I didn't think.
No, it's so haphazard, and nothing is like composed in a way to even attempt to make it illusory. So
yeah,
I
mean,
I don't know.
Part of that too is AFI does an amazing job on like film notes. So you got to go to the King Kong 1976 entry. The first paragraph, and basically every other sentence is like a reference to a daily variety article or a film magazine, whatever. In their entry, it is literally 2 paragraphs of nothing but lawsuits. Like it is insane. Like I want to get a book. There probably is one, a book or a movie about the making of this movie, because it was, trench warfare between De Laurentiis and Universal, and it was lawsuit back and forth. It was supposed to start filming in April 1976, but because of the lawsuits, De Laurentiis moved it up to January 76, up 4 months. And this thing is all over the place, and so you see it on the screen. It is a complete and utter mess. Mm-hmm. The budget started out at $6 million and ballooned to $24 million by the time it was done. It took 8 months to film. All over the place. They filmed a lot in Hawaii. It is, and they threw a ton of marketing at this. I mean, part of the reason, I think, what is bizarre to me about this movie is it is clear that in '76, in the mid '70s, this thing was all over the daily trades. It was a massive, massive movie that everybody knew about. It comes out, it does okay. It does not bomb. It does okay. They probably made some money on it, but it is as if by the time you get to when we're born, nobody remembers the movie that was ever made. It is one of the most bizarre things ever. Like I know a lot of like 70s blockbuster films, but this is one that just for whatever reason has been completely memory hold. And I wonder why that is. Like, why do you think that this one? And maybe I'm wrong. Do you guys remember this growing up at all? I mean, Chris, you said you didn't.
No, absolutely no knowledge.
Did you grow up
with
this?
I mean, I
VHS.
watched it. Yeah, the VHS. I certainly watched it, but like I said, it's been probably 30 years since I last saw it, and the only thing that stuck out of my mind is the giant hand. That's the only thing I could remember. I couldn't remember any of the set pieces or anything else really, and too young to remember a lot of the things that were notable. Now, I think to answer your question, though, I think it's just like it's not bad enough to be memorable.
Right.
But it's not it's not good either. Like, it's just kind of a mess, but not in an super entertaining way. I don't know. It needed to be one thing or the other, like either be straight or be lean, like you said, into the camp, or just be really bad. And
it
tried to be too much. There's parts that are bad and parts that are not, and I don't know what to make of it.
It was pretty universally panned by critics at the time too, and there's a couple of fun quotes I want to share. One from the almighty Pauline Kael of the New Yorker. She said, one might assume that the very first thing the movie makers would do would be to work out a more authentic view of the culture and get away from the, quote, savages from central casting of the 30s version, but there isn't much way to do that without disrupting the basic story, which kind of goes back to my central premise, right? Like there's, I don't know how you update this, how you modernize it in any kind of way that doesn't latch on to a lot of the problematic pieces of that original. But the funnier quote is actually from Vincent Canby of the New York Times regarding the ending, which we haven't mentioned yet. So this will be a great way to lead into it. Kong goes amok in New York City looking for Dwan. It sounds so stupid every time I say it out loud. Looking for Dwan, grabbing up a subway car and rattling it like a gourd, then trudging south to the World Trade Center, where he ultimately meets his fate. One of my objections to the film is the substitution of the Twin Towers of the Trade Center for the Empire State Building used in the original film. The World Trade Center is a very boring piece of architecture. The Empire State Building is not. Though Kong's last fight with Army helicopters is beautifully and bloodily done, that's debatable, the setting trivializes it. But I do think that's a cogent observation, is like, they're trying to do something with the whole like capitalism, corporate greed.
It's pretty straightforward.
But it doesn't work on a visual level. Like that is one of the reasons, perhaps, that iconic image of Kong on top of the Empire State Building with the airplane surrounding, which has like been, so just embedded in American pop culture, is because it is just like a striking image, and it's almost poetic that what ended up happening is that American culture kind of devolved into the boring and the ugly. I don't know. I haven't seen The Brutalist yet, so
do you guys know if the original ending was that stop motion? The gorilla in that, or was that man in suit? Do you guys know?
Yeah, it's stop motion
for the 76 version.
Oh, the 76 version or the 33?
I was saying 33 version because the 76 version,
33 stop motion.
33 stop motion, 76 man in a suit.
There, the man in suit thing, like it is quite obvious, especially at the end of the 76 version, that it's just a guy in a gorilla suit on top of like a miniature or whatever. It doesn't work. Maybe there's something to the World Trade Center not being, but it jumps between the two, right? There's not like a flamethrower, he gets burnt and he jumps,
right?
Which is cool. I would have cheered. It would have been fun in the theater. But I mean, the World Trade Center is pretty banal. Did no disrespect to it or whatever, to the building itself. I don't know. I don't really buy that though. Like, I think it's more than just the effects are kind of lame. They look stupid. They look more like a 50s, like really, really cheap B movie. And that's kind of why it doesn't pop anymore. I'm sure it popped in the theaters when people saw it, but like nowadays it's way too cheesy to take seriously.
But I was trying to think of that, like this guy that De Laurentiis got for the movie. What is his name? Gillerman? The director.
Oh, gotcha.
He's the guy that he did Towering Inferno.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
okay, which is great.
And he did Tarzan movies. He did big budget war movies, and like he should have been a competent hand at the job. And I'm trying to also think about like the other, big disaster movies, like Poseidon Adventure uses tons of miniatures, and it's really well done because
it's a great movie. Yes, by every comparative measure, that's such a better film than
right. So like, I just don't get how it is seen as even near the same league of that those kinds of movies, which
No.
we're
Well,
not.
it's not. I mean,
Well,
I think I get that there's a reappraisal, but I think number one, who is reappraising this? It's people that like. I think it's probably younger people would be my guess, and the Gen Z, like under 30, who are going back and seeing this and being like, "Oh, there's all this fascinating stuff in this movie. We used to do this. Remember when we were in our 20s? We would go back to really bad movies, yeah, and we'd be like, oh, but actually, there's this like subtext here that blah blah blah. That's what's happening because this is not a good movie, and anybody who makes an argument that it's a good movie is like not arguing in good faith. It's also De La Renta. I mean, the guys all over the place. They threw money at this to do it quickly, to cash in on like. Also, how they got the rights is very bizarre and doesn't really make any sense. It's a cash grab. It's a cash grab to make a blockbuster in '76, the year after Jaws, and be a big, huge movie. And the end results are kind of what they are. It wasn't really meant. This is a product that's not a film. You know what I mean?
And we've talked about De Laurentiis before. I forget on which episode.
His hands are in everything for like 50, 60 years.
He was an insane person. But
totally insane.
I was trying to find some kind of admittance because he also is just like a known over talker in interviews, especially in this time period. He has a great quote that he told Time magazine when the movie came out. He said, "No one cry when Jaws die, but when the monkey die, people gonna cry. Yeah, the intellectuals gonna love Kong. Even film buffs who love the first Kong gonna love ours. The new King Kong will be a multi-million-dollar production." And he just like has this thought in his head. He seems to have it. He very much felt representative of like the big like studio machine, right? Where like the producer gets the credit and deserves the credit. And I think that Spielberg with Jaws and a few other, this is the 70s, so this is like new Hollywood, and the auteur is rising, and it feels like partial cash grab, but also partial like resentment at the whole like singular author of a film style of movie making, which is another paradox considering they try to do the whole like oil and corporate greed thing, which what that's where Charles Grodin loses me, and I hate being lost by Charles Grodin of all actors. But he's like thinking like, okay, well, this isn't oil, or it's not going to be for 10,000 years, or whatever his scientist buddy said.
Which is funny line, by the way.
But what he gets it in his head that like having like literally transporting King Kong to New York will be akin to whatever gas company said we'll put a tiger in your tank. Like what it like is he's just insane. Like I just like that's kind of at the midpoint of the film.
It's pure exploitation, right? It's like, hey, let's go to a place that we don't know very well. It's also Orientalism, right? Let's go to this place that's strange and weird. Let's commodify it and strip that of its resources and its value, even though they don't even understand the value. Right, I think like Jeff Bridges or somebody talks about like like this is the King Kong is very important to the people of the island. It's like this symbiosis that they have, and he's just ripping it out to then commodify it and make cash and then move on with his life. Like it is like pure destructive capitalism at its core. And it's like whether you're selling oil or you're selling the spectacle of a large ape, it's the same exact process. Commodify, steal, and then make an Irish goodbye and get your, have your cash in the bank. You know what I mean? Like that's the part that I loved, because I was just sort of like, yeah, this makes total sense to me. And I don't know. Did that work for you, Riley, or did you feel like it was too slight? Because I could see the argument that it was kind of fluttering along the surface of social criticism.
It felt contrived to me. Yeah. Like they started with, it was very overt, and like I said in the setup, I was kind of along for the ride, giving it the benefit of the doubt because it was interesting to me. But I think it really jumped the ape or jumped the shark when Grodin decides, oh yeah, the logical thing to do here is to take the ape back to New York. Like I couldn't like that was the beginning of the end there. It just didn't make any lot. I believed it when Denim wants to take the ape, or Kong, I should say, back to New York. I believe that.
And I agree with you, but why is that? Because it is similarly, I do like that. That was another thing I noticed on this rewatch is like the people in the theater being like, what has Denim done this time? Like, what? It's not a movie? Like, and that whole...
He's an entertainer, though. Like, It makes logical sense. Grodin is some oil executive. It doesn't make any logical sense that you bring this giant gorilla as a spectacle for selling gasoline. I mean, there's so much they could have worked with there. I mean, it's the 70s. We got the gas crisis. There's burgeoning. I mean, the EPA is like just formed, right? Isn't that in the early 70s during Nixon?
Yeah.
So, like, there's something that maybe they tried to do there, but it was like almost an afterthought. Even though it's an oil company, it's just like they tried to force this social commentary onto this commercial blockbuster that they were trying to cash in. Like, it just they just ran into each other and didn't mesh. I don't know.
I need to bring up another thing that like just stood out like a sore thumb with the 76 version. First of all, this is PG.
Pre PG-13, but
pre PG-13, but still pretty hard PG. For referencing a porn film, and then also like using the word rape multiple times. Is that another thing where we have to kind of distance ourselves from the way that the 70s were? But like, because they're making the subtext text, they are also just like.
Sorry. Good.
No, what? Why?
Well, there's also, this is women's lib time going on in the mid 70s.
That's what I'm saying.
Too.
Yeah.
So it's almost like it could be read as an over correction in the other direction. Like, no, we need to go back to like defending the innocent white female, and she shouldn't be off having power of her own, because I don't know if they're saying she can't save herself, she can't be trusted. I mean, from the moment she comes into the movie, she's a lone survivor of some random yacht wreck.
So bizarre.
And then which is another just a way to insert her into the film, because they didn't have the movie making angle like they did in the first one. But I don't know, it could be read as like a kind of pushing back against women's liberation. It almost feels that way.
But there's also the other argument that she's so sexually free and open that like there's an empowerment to her that you don't get in the 2005 or 1933 version at all. I mean, she's a very confident woman. And there's even this scene that sticks out to me the most in the 76 version. She dips her in water and then pulls her up and starts blowing on her.
Yeah, that's so insane.
And she's like,
she's
having an orgasm as she's doing this, and like the smile on Kong's face afterwards is like, that's not like, that's overt. Like, it's all overt. And I'm like, what? The 70s were just a different vibe. It was a different vibe. Things were more free. You're also pre-AIDS. Like, sexual freedom was a different story in the 1970s than the 80s, 90s, and certainly now.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that plays into it. There is a sexual revolution going on. There is sort of like women gaining power through sexuality in a way that hadn't been done before. I mean, a lot of that started in the 60s, but it really sort of denouement that's in the 70s.
I don't know. Nuance though, like it's just all like it's not it's not subtle. It's not.
No, it kind of reminds me of like it has that weird sort of my touchstone to it's more like the 80s sort of almost like Porky's, like this very zany
teen sex comedy.
Teen sex comedy. Yeah, it has that looseness in like in these scenes, especially like around the hour mark, I think it is. As they're on the island exploring, she's with the ape, and they're all drinking, and it's just like I don't know. It is loose as hell. I think that to me, that for some reason that I'm attracted to that, I was like, oh, this is like fun. They're just having a good time. But in no way does that translate to good filmmaking. Yeah. It's more, like I said earlier, it's just more, to me, the attraction to the 76 version is a time capsule curiosity. because it's so much of the 70s. It's so kind of gonzo in the way that it was made, very like also very quickly, but also very slow. It's a total mess. But I honestly think that's why it's getting reevaluated, because like younger people go back and look at this and like, I've never seen anything like this.
True.
That's what it is. Like it's a bizarre film. And it just happened to be a blockbuster in 76. You know, I think that's a lot has to do. It's just a strangeness to the whole thing. And
it is Jessica Lange's. It was her first film. I think.
was going to say,
right?
yeah.
So, I mean, that's a curio, and it's an early film for Bridges.
Yeah.
Who's like this is before Tron, even. I mean, it's
is this after? But this is after
Thunderbolt.
Thunderbolt. Yeah. I was trying to think when he was, because he's so good in that.
Yeah, that's 2 years prior.
I got to tell you oh, go ahead, Chris. You go ahead.
No, I was just saying, but like, I mean, similar to Kurt Russell, like I was not bored anytime there was a frame of Jeff Bridges like getting his hair out of his face. So
yeah, crossing.
Although his photography drove me nuts. Like
I did notice that too.
He's taking pictures. I'm like, nobody takes pictures like that.
But also, he's like the stowaway, ape scientist.
Doesn't make any sense either. I mean,
also, I
was willing to forgive so much in that first half because it was. But
have you guys like stayed in touch with this franchise? Have you guys watched recent Kongs?
I was going to mention this, especially if you want to talk about the 05.
Because talk about the 05.
Because that's like these three movies feel like so disconnected from all the other garbage, including the newest stuff with Godzilla and whatever. And I can't help, having probably the last thing that I watched with the character of Kong in it was like one of those garbage Godzilla Kong movies.
I would say I take offense to garbage.
they're throwaway garbage.
No, some of them have good like production design. I can't remember. I think it was Skull Island is the one I'm talking about.
Okay, that one's campy. That one,
it's fun. It's really fun. It's got this really cool.
John C. Reilly's so good.
Yeah, it's also, I would say, it's definitely campy and has basically a Vietnam War film almost.
Yeah, that's a fair exception. But like it just this whole thing pronounced for me so much of like, man, like Japan is so much cooler than us. They dealt with their trauma it much better than the way we dealt with our racism. I don't know.
Yeah.
Incidentally, I think that's kind of to bring it back full circle. I think Twilight of the Cockroaches is also kind of a fable about the Japanese reconciling with their role in the war. That's my understanding, anyways. But
what do you think 1933 King Kong is reconciling colonialism? You think?
I do think that's an element there. I don't know if they're reconciling.
It flirts with reconciliation,
right? But I also agree with the idea that I'm fine with there being 33 Kong and then leave it alone. Like I don't think we've needed any Kong subsequent Kong. For the Kongs.
I will say the 2005 version, just because I spent the 3 hours watching it.
Is it 3 hours?
It's 3 hours plus long.
I don't think Peter Jackson can make a movie that's less than 3 hours now, though, right?
I mean, I'm sitting through this thing.
The Frighteners is a tight 100. Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
depending which version you watch.
Oh yeah, that's true. Man, and I swear, like the 2005 version, if you ever go back and watch it, it is. I have to say, it is universally praised. Like, go look at the Metacritic.
I'm noticing that
there's one bad review. My guy Mick LaSalle.
I was gonna say
we have like minds. It is one of the worst movies of this time period. I mean, I cannot explain to you how much I dislike this movie. It is just a complete, like the original. For all its sort of faults and stuff, there's an engagement to it. It's kind of like we're talking about Nosferatu. It's a very similar situation in the remakes where it's sort of like someone is obsessed with this old classic film, decides to remake it, and kind of forgets everything that's interesting about the original and just overstuffs their remake so that it's like one of those subs where the meat is just pouring out of the sandwich. I don't even know how to eat this. And
Meat mountain.
And then you do eat it all and feel sick afterwards. That's what seeing the 2005 Kong is like. It's just so overindulgent. And I
can imagine, especially on the small screen. Like that was, I remember that being one of the only reasons. Like, if I'm going to see this stupid movie, I'm going to see it on the big screen,
biggest possible screen.
Yeah, I avoided it back when it came out, but I think I just ended up watching it. I can't believe I rewatched it. It's just, and I love I love Peter Jackson. I mean, how did he go from? He did what? What's the movie? Brain Dead, Dead Again,
Dead Alive.
Dead Alive.
Yeah, it's Brain Dead in New Zealand.
Brain Dead in New Zealand. Yeah, he does that. It does stuff like Heavenly Creatures, and then does and then Frighteners, and then I don't know. While you love Lord of the Rings, it's like
I like Lord of the Rings. Yes,
okay. I make fun of them
before a bit too much. Hobbit is trash, but I do like the Lord of the Rings films.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean,
I'm like a Lord of the Rings fan. Like I like the books and I like the films.
I really love the movies. Like I love the first 3 movies. The Hobbit is unwatchable trilogy. And man, I don't know. I just wish it's too bad, Peter Jackson. I feel like we lose all these great artists to these terrible IPs.
Well, he got Hollywood money, and you kind of just, I think you lose some of that creative, initiative almost.
Yeah, it just disappears. It just goes away. James Cameron, rest in peace. I mean, also like Robert Eggers, we're going to lose him to like monster movies. And I'm like, ugh.
Wait, was Nosferatu a hit?
Oh, it was a massive hit.
What? Okay,
yeah, it was a huge hit. Yeah, Nosferatu was a massive hit, a very surprising hit. And then, he got signed up for whatever. What's he going to do? Like Frankenstein or like werewolves or whatever. I mean, that's what happens. They get success and they end up making, a 3-hour Adrian Brody mess called King Kong and Jack Black. Oh, God. I could go on and on about it.
What did they change? What did they change in the 05 version? It's obviously more similar narratively to
way more similar to
right?
33. It even has like the
it's even set in like the 30s, isn't it?
Yeah, set in the 30s.
Okay.
It's very similar. Jack Black's character is pretty different. Like, yeah, I would say there's also a lot of added characters. But the biggest difference, I think, obviously, is like the effects. And like there's
it circus and the
the part that sticks out to me in the 05 version versus the 33 version is when you're on the island in the 33 version, you see him fight some dinosaurs. There's like is there a pterodactyl that takes her or something? And he attacks it. In the 05 version, this segment on the island is like an hour long. And it is dinosaur carnage, stampede. There's a 20-minute segment, I think, of like bugs attacking people.
Oh, the bug! I remember the bugs.
Yeah, and it's sort of like I was watching the stampede, dinosaur stampede on my computer, and it looks so bad that I was like, "Oh my god, my bandwidth must be screwed up." It's like a lot of people are on the building, and then I switched over.
Previs?
Was well, yeah, exactly. And then I went over to YouTube to rewatch it and like a higher, assuming that it'd be 1080p, and I watched it, it's the same thing. I was like, how was this good? Like it looks horrendous green screen. It looks like if someone did a green screen right now, and I'm just like, it is what it is. It's one of those things where for whatever reason it's beloved, but there's only 2 reviewers that hated it, Mick LaSalle and then the New Yorker, which is the typical sticks in the mud who are like, nah, this isn't good.
But it's I mean, it hasn't aged well either in terms of like who goes back and is like, it was a great movie from the 2000s.
It was a big spectacle at the time, though.
It was probably Brody's first picture after The Pianist, wasn't it?
Oh, sure, yeah.
That's probably right. Yeah, so it was a big holiday movie too. Like I think it was like mid-December release.
I think it was like right after we graduated, probably.
Yeah, December 2005. I don't know. It's one of those movies that I think Maybe it's like the 76 version. People are just going to forget it like it exists. And then in 20 years, when Jenna Riffin
It's great.
also is our age, they're like, oh, like, did you like see? It's such an interesting film and like time capsule of the early aughts of the American Empire. Like I mean, truly.
It's a post 9/11 allegory.
Post 9/11 allegory.
Do you guys want to do some trivia to close this out?
Let's do it.
Okay. You both have the graphic open?
Yes.
Listeners at home, I've made a collage of 12 different 1970s films that were remakes, just like 1976 King Kong. And I'm going to read an excerpt of a review that came out at the time of the film's release. And based on that excerpt, the first person to guess correctly what movie it is a review for gets the point. Best out of 5 wins. Shall we begin?
Go for it.
Number 1. This is Ebert. What I don't understand is why the remake had to be a musical in the first place. Just a nice, quiet new version of the good old story would have been good enough. The material is so slight it can hardly bear the weight of music, and it sinks all together during a series of the most incompetent and clumsy dance numbers I've ever seen.
The front page?
Nope.
I want to say Star is Born, but that seems too obvious.
Correct.
Too obvious or correct? That's right.
No, too obvious.
Oh, okay. I don't know the route of these movies.
Black Caesar?
Nope.
Heaven Can Wait?
No. You don't know Heaven Can Wait?
No, never seen
It's
it.
one of the few here that I've seen, actually. The Lady Vanishes.
Nope.
What are these? The musical? You were saying Black Caesar.
Sorcerer? Is that a musical?
No, I wish.
Oh, God.
I really don't know these.
Bring it to Broadway. I am a truck. No, not Hurricane. You keep going. Just name them all.
In Steps?
Nope.
Lost Horizon.
There you go, Whiteford.
I've never even heard of Lost Horizon. What are you talking? These are made-up
seen
movies.
3 of these films.
Do you guys know the original Lost Horizon? 37?
No.
Oh, okay. It was one of my dad's favorite movies, and I've never seen the 73 version. The original is Capra, and it's a gorgeous 30s film. Takes place in the Himalayas. Explorer picture, romance adventure, and apparently this 73 version is like one of the most maligned remakes in remake history, for the exact reason. In the originals, yeah, just like a romantic adventure drama.
Okay, yeah, that's always a mistake.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry for starting us off kind of rocky, guys. Let me throw you a soft one.
There's a bone.
Okay. Here's Pauline Kael again. Undiluted pleasure and excitement. The scriptwriter supplies some funny lines, and the director provides such confident professionalism that you sit back in the assurance that every spooky nuance you're catching is just what was intended.
Sorcerer?
Nope.
Spooky Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Damn, you got it.
Yeah.
Boom, let's go.
Yeah, now that's a remake, am I right?
Yeah, that's a good one. I still prefer the 50s version, but I do like...
Yeah, me too.
I do like this, yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the few that where it's like...
considered one of the better remakes out there, right?
It definitely is. Yeah. It's got that great 70s paranoia vibe.
Rest in peace, Sutherland. So good. Okay. Dan's up by 2, but you still have a chance, Riley. Okay. Number 3. Comparisons are odious, but this remake continuously begs them by trampling heavily over its predecessor. The original anticipated with some poignancy a Europe at war. This version uses hindsight entirely to disadvantage. This is from Time Out Steps. Oh, so close.
Lady Vanishes.
There you go. The other Hitchcock remake. Yeah, I haven't seen this one, but it seems like it was kind of similar to King Kong in that it was in this case, a director, not a producer, but got too big for his britches. And, we don't know what that's like, having grown up in the 90s with Gus Van Sant. Apparently, the 39 Steps remake is pretty good. It seems like it was pretty well regarded. I
didn't know that there was a 39 Steps remake.
I didn't either until I put this together. Number 4. Okay, so Dan 2, Riley 1. Here we go. She is so overwhelming a presence that she can probably get away indefinitely with making movies as slipshod as this one, but it would be a shame if she were content to settle for that.
Star is Born.
There you go, 2-2. Bob Westweisand. Number
wait, who Chris Christopherson? Is that Chris Christopherson?
yeah, Chris Christopherson. That's
Also
the
he's such an enigma.
oh my god, I love it.
Fascinating dude.
That man. Yeah.
So and he just like a straight up good dude, like one of the few
Yeah.
good dudes in rock and roll country music. Okay. Last but not least, the tiebreaker. This is so exciting. We haven't had a tiebreaker in a while.
Long time, yeah.
There is something eerily disconnected about it. It may be because in a time of comparative peace, immortality doesn't hold the fascination for us.
Wait.
There you go. I didn't even have to finish the sentence.
I can't wait.
How would you put Chris? How would you put sorcerer on here?
I'm just teasing.
Literally just saw it.
I went back to our notes from that episode, and we talked so much about the reviews at the time and how angry we were.
Yeah.
So and also I wanted to destroy you a little bit.
Oh well.
But yeah, you got to see it on 35. That's so cool.
It's like mind blowing. Changes your life.
Oh my god. Freaking. Thank you so much, Riley, for joining us again. It's always a pleasure and a blast.
Thank you, guys.
What's next in your Robert Wise rewatch?
Oh, what is my next one? I don't remember what my next film. He's got such a strange early filmography.
I know, right?
What did you watch recently?
Here, let me pull up my list. I can tell you exactly.
Love a good.
Have you gotten to? I meant to ask you about this on text. I Want to Live.
No.
Oh my god, I like that one a lot. It's a noir. Oh yeah, what's the noir you watched that you told us about?
So the Born to Kill.
Born to Kill.
Yeah, that's a biggie. That was really good.
Yeah, I gotta.
Mystery in Mexico is the one that I just watched, which is fine. It's light fare, but Blood on the Moon is the next one. So
Blood on the Moon.
Western?
I don't know. This is all a surprise to me coming up. I go into them completely blind if I haven't seen them.
Fun.
I mean, obviously I've seen some of his biggies, but yeah.
Oh my god, it's a Western noir. That sounds killer. Have fun, man. Robert Mitchum.
Thanks for spoiling it for me. But
it's got Roger Mitchum. It's got to be good. He's good at everything. What do we got coming up? We got 1960s next episode, Fistful of Dollars, and then we're going to close it out. Pre-1960s, we're going to close out the Visionary Remakes with the Maltese Falcon, the 41 and 31 versions. Thanks for listening. This has been Film Trace.